So Andrew, this is a fascinating poll, and it's sort of a more across the board than just farmers. What were some of the questions you put?
Yeah, so we asked a couple of questions in this poll, and one of them was, do people agree with the government's proposal to tax livestock emissions before any other country in the world does? That was sort of the generic opening one, and then it's sort of more focused on the impacts. So I think it was, do they still agree with pricing if it's going to come at a cost of 20% of sheep and beef? And then also, are they still in favour if it ends up actually increasing global emissions through emissions leakage? So just, trying to get a sense of the sort of public's mood on this, and also, looking at those different factors, whether there's a change in there.
So 57% do not support taxing animal methane before other countries particularly.
Yeah, and it's up. I think there have been a couple of previous polls done within the last year on a similar type, I think, but they focused on cows, whereas we focused on agriculture, and the results were, about just over 50%. So I guess what we've seen here, actually, when the rubber starts to hit the road and we start talking about the actual impacts, you're sort of starting to see a bit of an increase in terms of that support for farmers or opposition to this sort of proposal. Because I guess, if you look back at those previous polls, it was all sort of esoteric and no consequences, and now we're talking about it and it's real and there's actual consequences, and those consequences are, perhaps 1 in 5 sheep and beef farmers going out of business, 1 in 20 dairy farms, communities being gutted, and then it's becoming real now. And so that's sort of, it's good to see those numbers coming through for sure.
Are people particularly vexed, it seems, at the thought of reducing food production or reducing livestock, as in your, particularly the sheep and beef with those losses?
Yeah, definitely. And I think you mentioned before, it was sort of 57% for that first opening question, and then closer to 60% for those follow-up questions in terms of, here are the actual impacts, are you still on board? And that certainly did whittle down the unknowns, as it were, and make a few people take a stand. Not a huge percentage, but still a reasonable percentage. And I guess the other thing that's shown is there's a whole bunch of people, if we roughly say about 60% were on board with the farmers' attitudes here, 25% were sort of following the government, and then there's, what does that leave? 15%, if my maths is right, that are unsure, unknown. So, you've only got 25% of the population that are solidly in behind what the government's proposing here. And, that's something I take heart from. And obviously the work we've got to do is reach out to those people that are unknown, unsure, and, make them help them to understand the impacts this is going to have, and why it's, if you're concerned about the environment, shipping emissions offshore isn't a solution to it.
The other element that was quite intriguing was the hint in the past of a urban-rural divide. It seemed to put paid to that.
Yeah, I think I've probably been noticing it for the last year or so, that I don't think there's such a... people I come across, I don't see this urban-rural divide. I see a Wellington, rest of New Zealand divide. But yeah, most people in town, the small businesses dealing with the same challenges we're dealing with out in the rural areas, shortage of labour, all the, concern around crime, health, all of the services, etc. So I think everyone's sort of more in tune with each other at the moment, quite frankly.
Now, the other, of course, just briefly, you had the other survey, and I know your farmers, your members of Federated Farmers, are very good at doing these surveys, the half-yearly, the bankers' satisfaction surveys, all that sort of stuff. But you had a huge poll over this with your chosen members.
Yeah. If I can remember the numbers correctly, I think as of an hour or two ago, when I got the last update, it was over 2,000 members had replied. So that's, normally for our surveys, we get about 1,000 responses. So getting 2,000, that tells you people are interested and people want to comment. I think out of the 2,000, 19 members supported the government proposal. And the vast majority were either they said, we should reject it entirely, or which was the strongest number, and then second strongest was, let's come up with a better alternative. And so, yeah, it was sort of very resounding sort of feedback from the membership